Jews are white colonizers. Who? These Jews? And colonizers? The indigenous people with more than 3,000 years of recorded history in the land of Israel? Or maybe the 2 million Arabs who are citizens of Israel? Something's not right. Welcome back, and thank you for wanting to know the facts and the truth. What's going on in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is big. You can't miss it on the news. You can't miss it on college campuses, and you really can't miss it online. But what are the facts? Why is this happening? That's what we're here to answer. Our approach is to examine the major themes and focus on the important events that help you make sense of what's happening today. We care about knowing the truth. We also care about the basic human right to live in peace. We care about ending the suffering. We care about finding justice. And we think you're here because you do too. The only path for us then is to go after the facts and be open to what they show us. Life can be beautiful without hatred, violence, and war, and maybe the way there starts with better understanding each other. Better understanding the Jewish people, the Palestinian people, the history of their conflicts and past peace efforts, and some of the major issues standing in the way of forging real peace. What the Hell is Going On in Gaza is a 9-part series made up of 30 episodes, each designed to help you understand a different but important part of the picture. As part 1 of our series continues, our focus stays on answering some basic questions about Israel. Here in episode 2, we'll address the question of whether Jews are white colonizers. We've heard a lot of voices making that claim, but is it true? Fortunately, they're facts, so let's talk about them. White colonizers? Are Jews either of those two things? Let's dig in and maybe first talk about where the whiteness is coming from. Who says the Jews of Israel are white? This is just a misguided effort to fit an American, slavery-based paradigm to a different situation on the other side of the world. It simply does not apply. And while we're on this, are we now shaming people by calling them white? Here's the fact. Most of Israel's population are of Middle Eastern descent. Less than 1/3 are Ashkenazi, Jews in the diaspora who settled in Europe. Mizrahi Jews are those who remained in the land of Israel and those in the diaspora in the Middle East and North Africa from biblical times to the modern era. They are the largest group of Jews in Israel. They never lived in Europe. They are Middle Eastern. Ethiopian Jews are those who lived for many centuries in the Kingdom of Ethiopia. They make up more of the Israeli population than Jews make up of the U.S. population. They never lived in Europe. They are African. Israel is home to 2 million Arabs, representing 21% of Israel's population. They are Israeli citizens with all the same rights as Israel's Jewish citizens. Israel's Arab population is 82% Muslim, 9% Christian, and 9% Druze. Let's recap. We learned in episode 1 that Jews are indigenous to the land of Israel. We learned here in episode 2 that the majority of Israel's citizens and the majority of Israel's Jews are Middle Eastern. Therefore, the white colonizers accusation is clearly nonsense. What about Zionism? What is Zionism? Zionism is the movement for the self-determination and statehood for the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland, the land of Israel. What isn't Zionism? Zionism isn't colonialism. Zionism is a national movement, one not motivated by economic gain, but driven by persecution and suffering of Jews, who then emigrated as refugees to their ancestral homeland, a return that has been part of their cultural identity for thousands of years. They have no colonial mother country, as they are a diaspora from the land of Israel. None of this is consistent with any honest definition of colonialism. Israeli Arabs dancing in celebration of the 10th anniversary of the Jewish state is not colonialism. Jews and Arabs playing cards together in Jerusalem is not colonialism. An Israeli school for Jews and Arabs is not colonialism. Still, this is a belief that underlies much of the division in the Middle East. So why do Arabs think it's colonialism? It's because over the last nearly 150 years, Jews have benefited from the self-interested actions of some of the world's great powers, from the Russian Empire to the British, French, Soviet, and later the Americans. For centuries, Palestine was part of the vast Ottoman Empire. In 1862, the Ottoman Empire encompassed not just Palestine and modern-day Turkey, but much of the territory surrounding the Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, and the Red Sea, though it was already in decline. And by 1913, it had shrunk considerably more. As a result, the Ottoman Empire was under increasing pressure from its imperial rivals. Throughout the 1800s, and until the First World War, the great enemy of the Ottoman Empire was the Russian Empire. Some saw it as a giant octopus, reaching its tentacles into the territories of its neighbors. The Russian Empire forced the declining Ottoman Empire to treat emigrant Jews from Russia in the 1880s as Russian citizens, protected and unaccountable to the laws of the Ottoman Empire. They did this to weaken their rival, not to help the Jews. The Russians hated the Jews. But the Arabs believed it was an imperial patron supporting Jewish colonialism. Then came the British. In 1917, when the British issued the Balfour Declaration to enlist Jewish support for the Allies in World War I, the Arabs believed it was an imperial patron supporting Jewish colonialism. In 1920, when the great European powers met in San Remo and divided up the land the Arabs felt was promised to Prince Faisal, the Arabs saw in the design imperial patrons supporting Jewish colonialism. In the 1930s, when the British responded to the Arab revolt by arming and training the Jews in Palestine, the Arabs believed it was an imperial patron supporting Jewish colonialism. Worse still, it was the British support that helped the Jews to defeat the Arabs in the 1948 war. In the eyes of the Arabs, it was the British who defeated the Ottoman Empire, under which Arabs had prospered. It was the British who stopped the Nazis at El Alamein, just as the Nazis were preparing to eliminate all Jews in Palestine. All of this contributed to the Arab perception that the colonialist Jews were safeguarded and protected by the Arabs' imperialist enemy. After the British, it was the Soviets who appeared to the Arabs to be the imperial benefactors of the Jews. That's because in 1948, the Soviet Union was the only nation willing to sell arms to the Jews, and did so through its client state Czechoslovakia. Why? The Soviets did this for geopolitical reasons, hoping Israel would become a communist state. But the Arabs believed it was an imperial patron supporting Jewish colonialism. After the Soviets, it was the French who appeared to the Arabs to be the imperial benefactor of the Jews. The colonialist abuses of the French in Algeria were well known to the broader Arab world. When the French provided fighter aircraft and nuclear power know-how to the Jews, the Arabs believed it was an imperial patron supporting Jewish colonialism. After the French, it was the Americans who appeared to the Arabs to be the imperial benefactors of the Jews. In the 1970s, the United States significantly increased its support for Israel, both financially and militarily. Notably, it had not been much of a supporter previously, and when that changed, it was primarily for geopolitical reasons related to its Cold War competition with the Soviet Union and the Islamist revolution in Iran, formerly a close U.S. ally. Nonetheless, the Arabs believed it was an imperial patron supporting Jewish colonialism. The Jews' remarkable ability to find what they needed when they needed it, to use the interests of other nations to their advantage, was mistaken by the Arabs for their being merely the colonial arms of imperial patrons. While the Jews are not colonizers, Arabs in Israel and much of the Middle East and North Africa are colonizers. You can see evidence of this in historical maps where Arabic was spoken 1,500 years ago compared to today. While Arabic is now the official language of 24 countries, Hebrew is the official language of only one. You can see it in the size of what's known today as the Arab world. Let's look at a few countries in the region. First, Yemen, home of the Houthis and a war that has left almost 400,000 dead, displaced 4.5 million, and today has 17 million at risk of starvation. Before Islam, Judaism and Christianity were the primary religions in Yemen. Islam arrived with the Muslim conquest in 630 CE. Today, Yemen is 99.9% Muslim. What about Iraq? A nation of 45 million people and a history that includes the world's first civilizations, going back some 10,000 years. Iraq was majority Christian before Islam became the dominant religion around 634 CE. Today, Iraq is 98% Muslim. The indigenous people of Iraq before the Muslim conquest were Assyrian. Today, the country is 80% Arab. Lebanon was a majority Christian nation until the Muslim conquest in the 7th century. Today, Lebanon is 70% Muslim. Syria was a nation of mixed peoples and religions until the Muslim conquest in the mid-7th century. Today, Syria is 80% Muslim. In Egypt, Copts were the indigenous people. Most were Christian until the Arab conquest in the mid-7th century, when Arabs conquered, colonized, and imposed their religion, Islam, on the peoples of North Africa. Today, Egypt is 90% Muslim. Tunisia is another North African country whose indigenous people, the Amazi, were conquered by Arab Muslims in the 7th century. Today, Tunisia is 99% Muslim. Morocco is the same story as Tunisia. The indigenous Amazi were conquered by Arab Muslims in the 7th century. Today, Morocco is 99% Muslim. Our point is to show you the 7th century Arab conquest that swept across the Middle East and North Africa, conquering, colonizing, and imposing Islam on country after country. It is the Arabs, the Palestinians who came to the land of Israel through conquest, colonialism, and expansionism. It is the Jews who are indigenous. Even Hamas knows the truth. In a speech broadcast on Egyptian TV in March 2012, Palestinian politician and Hamas member Fathi Ahmad condemned Egypt over the fuel shortage in Gaza and said, quote, "Half of the Palestinians are Egyptians and the other half are Saudis." If you need more evidence, consider some of the common last names of Palestinians. They literally say where they came from. Al-Masri means from Egypt. Al-Takridi means from Iraq. Halabi means from Syria. And Al-Hijazi means from Bahrain, Oman, or Saudi Arabia. Thanks for watching episode 2 in part 1 of our series, What the Hell is Going On in Gaza? Hopefully now you have a better understanding of the facts around the false claim that Jews are white colonizers. If you'd like to leave a comment or get in touch, visit our website at www.getthefactsmiddleeast.com. This was just a start. There's a lot more to learn in this series, so please keep going and check out episode 3. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your interest in learning more about the war in Gaza. And remember, where there is no knowledge, there can be no insight.